Another inquiry taking place. The State Capture Commission of Inquiry has heard how Gupta-linked consulting firm Regiments Capital unduly benefited from multiple transactions with Transnet. Let's get more on what came out of the commission yesterday and what we can expect today. Our reporter Mbalenhle Mthethwa joins us now live from Parktown. A very good morning to you, Mbalenhle. The Judicial Commission of Inquiry into allegations of state capture has heard more revelations relating to fruitless expenditure at Transnet. Dr. Jonathan Bloom taking the stand today. Let's just recap on what he said, especially about the swapping of interest rates.
Regiments was the supply development partner of JP Morgan. In other words, they worked together. But what is interesting, JP Morgan was appointed to do conduct these particular transactions. So it is unclear why Regiments was paid 7.5 million rand by Transnet, where if they were working on the transaction as JP Morgan supply development partner, then they would be paid by JP Morgan. But they issued an invoice to Transnet for an amount of 7.5 million.
Good afternoon, Desiree. Definitely we've heard about fruitless and wasteful expenditure from Dr. Jonathan Bloom, who was testifying yesterday and concluded his testimony yesterday. Basically, he spoke about an interest rate swap, which is not the first time it's come up before this commission, but he's basically equating the actual interest rate swap as equating to fruitless and wasteful expenditure. And he says that the interest rate swap was unnecessary because policy stipulates that an interest rate, whether fixed or floating, should have been determined when the agreement, the loan agreement with the ZAR Club loan was finalized. And he says that there is no justifiable reason for the decision to convert it from floating to fixed only 3 days later, 3 days after receiving the loan from the 12 billion rand loan from the ZAR Club loan. And he's basically painting a picture that this was basically a scenario or an acquisition that was created to benefit Regiments Capital. And he says that those who made the decision had taken the 2-year view, and they said that the interest rates were likely to increase, and for that reason it was necessary to do an interest rate swap. But he presented a presentation yesterday, and in the slides he shows that the interest rates have not really peaked to the levels that were anticipated when they'd done the initial 2-year view. And he says it doesn't make sense how Transnet was locked into a 15-year agreement when they'd based on a 2-year view. Now he says that it is rather unnecessary for Transnet to have even gotten involved in the interest rate swap, and he's painted the picture that this was done in the interest of Regiments Capital, which we know as a Gupta-linked company. Let's take a listen at what he had to say.
Okay, Mbali is referring to that clip that we just played, but Mbali, perhaps let's take a look forward to what we can expect today.
Definitely, Desiree. So today we're having someone from Transnet's internal treasury department coming in to speak to us, and we're expecting him to basically answer a question as to why he went ahead, the decision was made for the interest rate swap when Transnet had the capacity to do this interest rate swap internally, and why Transnet had spent such large amounts of money in the interest of doing this interest rate swap, and basically saying that he's also going to have to answer questions as to why the Treasury Department did not act in the interest of Transnet, but rather in the interest of Gupta-linked companies. Another thing that also came up, which is also mentioned in the up sound that we played just not so long ago, is the cross-currency swap, which was another loan that was gotten from the China Development Bank of over 10 billion rand. Now, the cross-currency swap is in the interest when it's done in the interest of protecting the company from when the rand fluctuates or weakens against the currency, which is the yuan. And in that interest, you hedge against the risks that would be associated with extreme currency fluctuations. And basically, at the time, they did this cross-currency swap with Nedbank, and they had appointed JP Morgan to basically facilitate this cross-currency swap. However, we heard yesterday Dr. Bloom telling the Commission that Regiments Capital basically an invoice for 7.5 million rand, and he's basically explaining that the 7.5 million rand was irregular and it was fraudulently paid to Regiments Capital because they were not appointed to facilitate this cross-currency swap, and that the company that should have received payments was JP Morgan, and JP Morgan should have been the one paying Regiments Capital. Now, we're going to hear more answers as to what happened when these decisions were made, when the new witness comes along. But for now, it's back to you in studio.
Mbalenhle Mthethwa is coming to us live from Parktown, where the State Capture Commission is currently underway.